Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dogs and cats, children and babies, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be joining us from. It's Driveline Academy podcast, the world's most dangerous podcast. I am your host, Deven Morgan, Direct Youth Baseball Driveline, founder of the Driveline Academy. Did I say all the things? I think I said all the things. With me, not in person, but in spirit, is my brother, my partner, my co-host, Driveline Academy Assistant Director, Driveline Academy International Man of Mystery, Jeremy Tectio, who'd probably be sitting like right over there or right over there. And to that end, if you're joining us on an audiovisual platform, like our good friends over at Spotify, you will see that the studio has changed. This is the jury rig version of the studio, just to make sure we get an episode out this week, because in the words of the great Rakim Allah, it has been a long time and we shouldn't have left you. We had to take the podcast room down. Obviously, some things have been upgraded. We have chairs. So good things are happening. The room isn't finally dialed. That'll be happening pretty soon. So ideally, by the time you see the next episode, this will be like whiz bam, looking like $1,000,000. Right now, it's a little bit in progress, but like that's okay. Progress, not perfection. We're gonna do a solo pod because I want to make sure again that we get something for you this week. And I've got a bunch of stuff kind of in the hopper that I wanted to talk about with my brother Jeremy, who's not here today. And in his absence, I'm just going to do this in a little bit of a different direction, and talk about some stuff that I said online and expand, because sometimes the nature of this social media stuff is that in a short form presentation, it's hard to communicate the sum totality of the idea, which is the nice thing about getting on a podcast, is you don't have that concern. I said the other night, and I'll try to just do it accurately, because God knows I don't want to, screw up the thing that I said. That sounds like some complete word salad. Watching the World Series, and I got an email from a guy who was talking about, what he's trying to do in terms of advance this idea of skills of skill in his local league. And the reason he's trying to advance is he's seeing too many guys at the 7 and 8U level that are telling kids that like a walk is as good as a hit. I got some problems with that. I have some thoughts and some feelings and some considerations. So what I said is like, the old "a walk is as good as a hit" saying is absolutely not true at 8U and younger. At those ages, we want a lot more of Vladimir Guerreros Seniors than we do Joe Sewells. If you don't know, Joe Sewell is a guy who has had the least amount of strikeouts in MLB history relative to kind of his service time, or at least that's what Baseball Almanac tells me. I'm not that old that I watched Joe Sewell play. I might feel like it sometimes, but I'm not. The response has been like largely positive. And I think the funny thing is that some people are kind of taking that and kind of run with it and like, well, yeah, maybe that's also true at 10U, right? And if you've seen any version of first year coach pitch or first year kid pitch, and you see the game for what it is, which most of the time involves children sacrificing massive amounts of velocity just in order to try to throw a strike. Those first years of kids that are pitching are really, really challenging. Shout out to any coaches or parents that have already suffered through that landscape with their children. I remember it not so fondly. But I think you can extrapolate some good things out of that, which is if the pitchers are largely going to struggle to throw strikes, then what does the competition environment look like in a way that's actually engaging and skill driven, as opposed to one that's optimized to win in that environment? And I think it presents some pretty stark opportunities on either side of the coin, depending on what type of persuasion of a coach you are. If you're a guy or a girl who just like needs to win, then certainly at that stage of 8U and younger baseball, maybe even at the 9U level, having kids basically go up to the plate with an approach to not swing is probably going to pay dividends. And we've talked about this before, right? This is just kind of a game theory optimal approach to winning, which isn't the same as development, and which isn't the same as an opportunity to create an environment that optimizes for learning. And like you guys have heard me do this spiel 1,001 times. Um, but I'll guess I'll do it again just for the sake of any new viewers that might happen to be joining us. First of all, thank you. If you can do the like and subscribe thing, that's great. Um, Winning a youth game at the 8U level pretends nothing for your child's athletic future. Just like let that sit for a minute because it's true. You can't future proof this stuff. So, number one, all of these game results are largely meaningless. That doesn't mean that there aren't stakes. And I think the stakes are pretty simple to comprehend. We want the game to be engaging for kids, and there's a number of different ways we can drive engagement, but I think engaging gameplay has to be kind of the North Star because that's the thing that we want kids to come back for. Um, so the game theory optimal approach, where we have kids going up to the plate with the intention of not swinging, because that helps us get a base runner, and the more base runners that we collect, the more likely we are to score runs. Um, the issue there is that you are just hemorrhaging learning opportunities. You are hemorrhaging a learning opportunity to have a kid start to understand even what their strike zone is or the stuff that they can hit. You are hemorrhaging a learning opportunity to have a kid start to develop an approach about what they want to swing at in certain counts versus what they don't want to swing at in other counts. And I will grant that the 8 and 9 year old level, that's probably a little bit of an advanced concept. It's been a while since my kids were 8 or 9 years old, but it hasn't been that long. And the point that I'm trying to make by suggesting that we need more Vladimir Guerreros Seniors instead of Joe Sewells there is if I could just like make a wish, right? If I could turn my complaint, which is truly just a desire, if I could turn my complaint into a desire, and if I could manifest that desire, the desire is I want the game to be as engaging as possible. Okay, well, what does that look like? Well, I think it's relatively easy to make the argument that an engaging version of youth baseball at this really, really young level is one where kids produce something, right? The mindset that you cultivate by having something being rewarded for what you produced is very different than the one that you would cultivate if you were rewarded for not making a mistake, right? So if a swing and miss is a mistake or striking out is a mistake, we understand that's an inevitable part of our game. That is just something we cannot escape at almost any level past T-ball. If we demonize that mistake and basically act as if that mistake is unacceptable, such that I'm so deeply in fear of that outcome that I would rather a kid not swing, even if there's anything that they could find a barrel, and I'm willing to punt on all those learning opportunities, um, I think you're reinforcing the wrong value system for that child in the way that they're going to come to learn the game. Because what you're effectively saying is that like I don't want to run the risk of failure, and it's that failure is so impactful that we are going to strategize around it, right? We've talked before about kind of this idea that like a ground ball needs to be a fly ball only needs to be caught. A ground ball needs to be caught, thrown, and then caught again, and how that coach, right, that coaching mantra is one that acknowledges the inherent difficulty in youth baseball for kids to reliably execute these type of skills that truly are developing. But even that, at least, is predicated on a kid hitting the ball, right? It's predicated on contact, and what we're kind of trying to do is understand the difference between different types of the value of one type of contact versus the other. Um, Having a kid just go up with a non-competitive mindset because we're so desperately in fear of the potential negative of their failure uh, is lunacy. It's absolute lunacy, except that it's not if relative to you and your priorities as a coach. So that's what I said. And somebody replied and had like a really good comment that like also kind of hurt my heart because it shouldn't take it it shouldn't be this bad. Um, Let me see if I can find it. And if I was more prepared instead of just like trying to deliver this to you in a very short amount of time, well, we wouldn't be here, but we are. Pat Tehan says it's really hard to make the game reward hitting it hard at that age. I just wanted to teach my kid to love hitting it hard for its own sake. And I think the thing that Pat kind of gets at there is again like to me the core issue is this lack of agreement of the intention. We we don't have a universal agreement by youth baseball coaches on what the intention of youth baseball should be. Therefore, it's a struggle for guys like Pat to acknowledge that they want their child their desire, not a complaint, but their desire is for their kid to understand that hitting it hard is good, right? We're trying to just like first principle the crap out of this thing and distill it all the way down. Hitting the ball hard is good. I want my kid to love that. If as a if we have parents in youth baseball that have that type of mindset that I would say is positive, and they see conflict between that desire for their children and the environmental signal that they're getting, that doesn't say good things about our environment. Um, that is a problematic configuration for us to be because again, kids got to hit. You got to be able to teach a kid how to hit. Um, but the moment that you start to introduce ideas like this, and again, you're doubling down on the kids' fear that they already have existing from a cognitive development standpoint to even properly put these type of failures into context, put these type of learning opportunities into context, that's an issue. So I thought we could talk briefly in the time that we have today in this jury rig setup of our room. Okay, how do you teach a kid how to hit? I'm gonna try to just like think through this live in the in the in the best way I can based on the experience that I've had. Hopefully, this would be beneficial to you. And I'm going to stop there and realize that I didn't do my housekeeping that we need to do at the top of the show. And the first part of that starts with axbat.com, code DL20. Get yourself 20% off at axbat.com. Why should you do that? Axe bats are good bats. They have USA bats. They have U-Trip bats. They have BB Core bats. They have training bats. They're going to have some pretty cool new training bats coming soon. I digress. Um, they're good. They're durable. You're not going to see an axe bat that runs into that thing that other manufacturers do, where like every other year there's these batch of people that go on to justbats.com and they complain about end caps popping off and they complain about brittle barrels, etc., etc. My kids and the kids in our academy have swung a ton of axe bats over the years. I would say that they are one of the more durable bats we've ever seen. So if you're into that idea, acknowledging that your kid might be swinging the same bat for a year or two, and you don't want to have to like buy twice instead of buying once, axbat.com, code DL20, 20% off. Um, Again, because it's specific to this idea of like teaching kids how to hit, and we're going to talk about again. Okay, smart guy. Like, how am I going to teach a 7 or 8 year old kid to develop like a hitterish mindset? Well, part of that starts with the way that kids engage with the bat. And for me, the axe handle, if you can put that into kids' hands early, it is going to naturally help you solve a lot of the issues that kids have with bat path as a result of bad hand orientation, right? I can't tell you how many times I've seen kids get into the box and like they start loose and then they get tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. And now my wrists are completely compromised, which then affects my ability to like deliver the barrel. Bat path gets screwed up, and now I have more swing and miss because of something that's happening way up the chain. Part of the reason that our book that's coming out soon, pre-order details to follow, includes a lot of information about just like fundamental principles of hitting, things like the way that you orient your hands on the bat, is because it matters. You want to pattern in something sustainable, and the biggest thing there is not to have negative downstream effects of bad hand orientation and wrist position at contact. The axe handle, because it naturally kind of puts you in this, what you want to call door knockers, like whatever you want to call it, it's going to put the hands that way. we're just removing a really simple problem from the equation. Doesn't mean the kids are going to be perfect. Kids are going to be kids. They're not small adults, etc. But I think the axe handle is just something that should be in the hands of basically every kid starting at T-ball. And now that Axe has a T-ball bat, you can do that. So axebat.com, code DL20. Dominique Lightyear 20. Get yourself 20% off. So let's teach a kid how to hit. So we're talking about 7 to 8 year old kids. Let's assume that they played T-ball for like 5 and 6, or maybe they just started at 6 years old. So the kid is comfortable with this idea of moving a bat at a stationary object, and now we need to start scaling upwards, right? We need to take that skill that's predicated on not having to make a perceptual decision about when and where the ball is and when and where the ball is going to be, making that decision with incomplete information based on like ball flight very, very early. Kids are going to struggle, right? Especially if you just put them 7 or 8 year old kids at like a straight up 46-foot distance. Not only that, but if you, a well intentioned parent, are like 5'6" or taller, and you are on the bump from 46 feet away, your release height is like way up here, and the kid is like way down here. So, what does that mean? Descent angle of the pitch is going to be very, very steep. If a kid's going to get on plane with that type of pitch, what does that swing look like? This is like the very, very steep attack angle. The thing demonized by your favorite commentator and mine, guys like guy likes, I don't even know what I want to call him. Mr. Spray Tan, right? Um, they demonize that really steep attack angle swing. Well, if you are pitching to a 7 or 8 year old kid as a full grown adult while you're standing from 46 feet away, extreme descent angle, right? You're going to cultivate that type of thing. We don't want that. So we understand that our athlete is going to struggle making the decision of when and where to swing. We understand that mechanically, due to age relative lack of strength, capacity, and development, they might not move particularly well. We also understand that we just want to like probably cultivate intent and cultivate output and put a lot of that mechanical focus to the side. We also understand that we're going to start in a training environment now that's going to ease their transition into hitting a live ball. And we're not going to just like dump them at the deep end of the pool and hope that they swim. That's a pretty crappy safety strategy. I would also argue that's a pretty crappy strategy for introducing a young child into an engaging version of the game. So, okay, Deven, stop flapping your gums. What are we going to do? Here's what we're going to do. Introductory, I probably want to have a mix of some tee and something that is a very hittable moving pitch, which to me is always going to come back to like side soft toss. I think side soft toss is like the number one most neglected drill that you can do with most hitters that are in single digit ages. Here's why. Number one, you still have to make a perceptual decision and link that to movement because the ball is moving. But because the distance is so short, and you have the ability, because you compress the distance, probably to be a lot more repeatable with the delivery of where the ball is going to be, unless you're like, super Ron Harper with your BP throwing. Ron Harper? That's Bryce's dad, right? Ron? I think so. That guy's the GOAT. In a side soft environment, we can kind of address both of those things, right? Kid's going to have to make a decision, have to link that with movement, but we're in an environment where that decision can be made relatively repeatably without a lot of the same chaos that you would expect from just kind of, I don't know, 40 grade adult BP throwing, right? So number one, there's that. And to be really specific, and I hammer on this all the time, when I'm talking about side soft toss, I am not talking about setting myself up in a position where the hitter is right there and I'm literally like feeding the ball directly into their belly button. Don't do that. Please, for the love of God. If you want to work with a kid and help them to develop, this ability to kind of make quality contact deep in the zone, that's fine. I don't think you need to have that worry about 7 to 8 year old children. 7 to 8 year old children party out front. Okay, I want that contact point to be in front of home plate and maybe 2 to 3 baseballs forward. Right, that's where I want to be. So for me, just in terms of the physical construction of our side soft toss environment, the way that I used to do with my kids are righties, right? So they're right hand box. And I am a little bit positive into the field of play. And I am serving a ball that is both, it's into the zone, right? Not at the zone, but into the zone. So if you've got your kid orienting at kind of the back of the box, which is generally again what I always did with my kids, I would ask for kids to have kind of that front toe pointed at the top half of the box before the diamond starts to cut in here. That bottom edge, the last straight edge, that's where I wanted that front foot at. So if I'm side softing from there, I'm probably at the front part of the left-hand batter's box, or maybe kind of the equivalent position on the foul line going up to first base. I want some amount of positive forward trajectory into kind of the hitting zone. That's number one, is get that right. Again, with the Skills and Skill training manual coming out soon, we're going to address this in detail. Pre-order details to be coming soon. We'll just do a YouTube video or something like that for free. We'll get into it. But the configuration of that side soft toss environment is super important. It's a shorter distance. It should be a more easily accessible hitting environment for that young kid. Now, let's assume that they're also going to have some failure. Let's assume that they're 7 to 8-year-old children that are going to struggle with the context of that failure. So we might need to vacillate back and forth. Okay, so programming wise, what I would do is I'm probably thinking about rounds of 8. Okay, and I'm thinking about rounds of 8 where we can go back and forth between the tee in between a side soft environment, right? I'm trying to do that, one, because I don't want the whole environment to revolve around failure. I want to specifically avoid that with a 7 to 8-year-old child, because I don't know how well that child is going to deal with that failure, no matter what context I provide, right? So let's first of all think about doing rounds of 7 or 8 where we're kind of going back and forth between tee and side soft. And I specifically want those rounds to be, again, around 8, maybe 8 to 10, but I don't want them to be like infinite 40 pitch rounds without any type of break. Here's why. If I'm doing it at rounds of 8, I can say to a 7-year-old child, hey, let's see if we can have 3 of these 8 pitches be hit past the pitcher's mound, right? For example. I want to give them an external goal or where I want the ball to be hit, because to a degree that can inform and impart some amount of learning and the ability for them to start to link mechanics and output and intention. That's a good thing. For 2, I want to do those rounds of 8 because we can start to set PRs within this training environment. Okay. Hey, we go out and we're going to hit on a, Saturday morning. And we're going to do 4 rounds of 8 on tee and 4 rounds of 8 on side soft. So we got 64 swings total. And the tee rounds are always going to be probably the higher performing rounds, because you don't have to worry about that child making a perceptual decision about the ball. They can really let it eat. The side soft rounds, hey, I'm just keeping track of points. I'm just keeping score. And even if that first round, we got 1 ball hit past the pitcher's mound, well, the next round, what's our goal? 2. Okay, let's say we get 2. What's the next round goal? 3. And even if over the course of those 4 rounds we're going to have on side soft, so 4 rounds of 8, 32 pitches, let's say, or 32 side soft feeds, right? let's say that like if I look out on the field, I still only see like four balls that are hit to the pitching mound or further. Okay, fine. Our score was 4 today. We're going to come back in 2 days and we're going to try to score 5. This again is like this gamification engagement loop where you want to give them like this breadcrumb path towards what success means, right? And eventually, if you keep running this loop, the kid is going to start to go, hey, mom, hey, dad, I don't need the T anymore, right? I just want to work on side soft. Great, 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 great. I'm not saying you should continue to do arbitrary T work for the sake of T work, because again, we're talking about a young child that's going to very quickly move from a coach pitch environment to a kid pitch environment to like a more advanced kid pitch environment. The ball moves, we need to train that way. So the sooner that we can get them kind of focusing on that, I think largely the better. Um, but if we allow them to make that decision, hey, maybe we're giving them a little bit of autonomy about what they actually want to do in the game, what they want to work on, and why. Um, I mean, I remember we would have days at the field where, my kid might want to finish on the tee at that age, and they wanted to finish on the tee because they know when that ball was on the tee, they could really like just get into it and try to hit it, take an absolute G hack, which I loved and I cackled and it was great and I loved it. Am I aware that like doing these swings, these G hacks off of a tee, that's not where we need to go from a training paradigm? Yes, absolutely. Does that invalidate the fact that my kid liked it and it was fun? No, not at all. Um, Broadly, I think if you can advance this type of stuff in your kid's mind, hey, you choose how you want to engage with the game. We're leaning into that autonomy thing. We're giving them a path to have a relationship with the game that's based on their interests and their desires, not us as the parents shoving it down the proverbial throat. Um, so the first thing I would do with this 78-year-old kid, let's start to work out and vacillate back and forth between some T work and some side soft. Um, you want to level that up? Here's two ways you can do that. One, MiniHitting Plyos are the best way that you can start to lean into this idea of having a kid start to quantify contact quality. Because even a 7 to 8 year old child, if they are doing side soft with a MiniHitting Plyo, well, number one, it's smaller than a regular baseball. That's a good thing because it's going to force them to be really aware of basically barrel accuracy, right? It is going to be harder to flush a MiniHitting Plyo than it is a regular 5-ounce baseball, strictly relative to the relationship between ball and bat. Smaller object, harder to flush, training environments that like really make barrel accuracy something that we're going to start working on in an appropriate level. Let's say 7 to 8, probably not the worst idea. So we talked about switching back and forth between T and side soft, right? Uh, you could, of your 4 rounds of side soft, be half of them be regular baseballs, half of them with minis, right? Those regular baseballs would be much easier to flush. It's going to sound better when it comes off the barrel. Kids are going to like that. The minis are going to be harder to flush. There's a different game we can play, what we call flush or cake. If the mini comes off the barrel and it still looks like a circle, you hit that thing flush, right? If the mini comes off the barrel and it pancakes out and it thins out, well, you cut it or sliced it. So we could start to do games like, okay, we had 6 balls that got hit further than the pitcher's mound, but of those 6, how many of them came off with like that flush circular shape and did get pancaked out? Well, it's 2. Our score was 6. We had 2 flushed. You can play any variation of point games with that, right? Let's say each ball that was flushed is worth 1 point. I'm sorry, each ball that was hit past the pitcher's mound is 1 point, and the ones that hit flush are 3. Okay, so that's 6 points or 4 points for the ones that got done past the pitcher's mound. 6 points for the 2 that got flushed. That's 10 points on the day, right? We're leaning into this idea of gamification. We're leaning into this idea of context. We're leaning into giving a kid a breadcrumb like trail towards skill development. That's engagement. Straight up. That's what it is. So, one way you can do that was with a MiniHitting Plyos and start to work on a little bit of contact quality. If you want to give a new implement to the environment, smash factor balls. Okay, so the minis are small and they're heavier than a baseball, so it's going to be harder to hit those flush and far, which is going to compel our young developing athlete to focus on barrel accuracy in an appropriate fashion, and they're going to have to develop some bat speed to hit that ball far, right? Because heavier than a baseball, it's going to be more, be less resistant to movement, right? Smash factor ball. Um, if you were going to start doing front flips or a full on live arm with a kid that was like, say, 8 or 9 from an appropriate distance, ideally from a knee or sitting on a bucket, so we're not creating this incredibly drastic attack angle. Smash factor ball is a great thing to introduce to that environment because, number one, and I'm not saying that any parent would ever do this intentionally, other than that guy down in Huntington Beach from a couple weeks ago in that episode. Um, Smash factor ball, if you do happen to like come hard and inside on a kid, not intentionally, it's not going to hurt as much as getting hit with a regular 5 ounce baseball. It's a smashy. They're super soft, super squishy, won't hurt. Number two, because they're lighter, because they're squishy, it's going to go farther than either a 5 ounce baseball or a mini hitting plyo. So again, let's think we're doing like 3 rounds. Let's go 3 rounds of side soft. One round of 8 with regular baseballs, one a round of 8 with the mini hitting plyos, one a round of 8 of smash factor balls. In those different rounds, we are incentivizing different things. We are engaging with the athlete in a different way, and we're giving them just like different opportunities to have fun. Like, let's not forget that fun is important and good, and we should do that. Um, so that's one way that you can start to level up that environment as you start to kind of transition from T into side soft and maybe just additional, just only working inside soft. And to be clear, I don't think there's anything wrong if you just want to stay inside soft, to be honest. Um, I spent years doing nothing but side soft with my kids because I was super yipped up about my BP ability. I separated the shoulder twice. Throwing is not particularly great. Um, that, but like, look, man, BP is not about you, right? Ted Williams is not going to walk by my field and see me delivering like 80 grade BP and be like, that's it, champ, right? Casey Stengel is not going to stop by. That's not happening. It's about the athlete and delivering them something they can develop with. I think side soft is a perfectly reasonable alternative if you struggle with front toss or flips or anything like that. But let's talk about flips. So let's say we've got a kid that is starting to get comfortable with this idea of being able to time up a pitch and relate that to their swing from a side soft environment. Great. What's the next place to go? Flips, man. Front flips, perfect place to go. Why would I suggest that front flips are the way to go? Okay, number one, uh, there's a couple different things we can do. With front flips, again, I can constrict the environment, assuming I have an L screen to stand behind. Please do not, for the love of God, stand out there in front of like a developing 8 to 9 year old child without an L screen giving them flips. Your dentist might appreciate that choice. Your dental insurance might not. Don't do that. So find an L screen, whether that's just like a box net or anything. Like find something to keep yourself safe first of all. But if I'm doing front flips, I can compress that distance pretty significantly if necessary. Again, I think we're making the problem a little bit easier to solve by reducing the distance, which is a valid thing for a young 7 to 8 year old child that's learning how to swing. Water break, sorry. Guys get freaked out all the time about like, well, I got to get him ready. I got to get him ready. So I got to pitch to him from, 60 feet, 6 inches. Bro, these kids are in single digits. They're going to get there when they're 14. You have an eternity of time before that's like an actual real issue you need to deal with. Um, Front flips, though, I can stand with an underhand front flip and have that look like the descent angle and release angle of something that they're actually going to see in competition. I could certainly do the same thing just sitting on a bucket and kind of like dart throwing overhand as well. Again, just pay attention to kind of this relationship between distance and descent angle and try to make sure that we're largely like mapping this thing to what kids are going to need. Um, But flips again, I think is a great way for you to be consistent with delivering hittable pitches for that kid to start to scale the difficulty up a little bit, right? We're not kind of side soft, super palatable. I'm just going to drop it in your wheelhouse. I'm, boy, I don't know. I mean, when I started doing flips with my kids on field, I would say I was probably 15 to 20 feet away. And then over time, I started to compress that distance down. Like the closer that my kids got to like 12, the closer that I started to kind of compress that distance, because now I can compress distance, be a little bit more firm with my flip, and give them something that's going to be appropriately challenging, and also consistently in the zone in a way that, like, for me personally, I'm just unlikely to be from 46 or 60 feet away. It's not about me, it's about them. Um, or you could do flips from, again, that same distance, maybe 15 to 20 feet away, and give something that's going to have like a nice, a nice, I don't know, 9 to 12-degree descent angle, right? Something like that is a decent place you could be. And again, it's just all about kind of finding the sweet spot of distance and arm action relative to your player's height, relative to their strike zone, that's going to put you in that type of ideal configuration. And then, eventually as you get closer to 8, and get closer into 9, yeah, maybe I am sliding out to the full distance, right? Maybe I'm going all the way up to 46 feet. Um, the point being is that I want to, again, have this like breadcrumb trail. The point being, I want to have this breadcrumb trail between our T work and our side soft and our flips and our live arm, that ideally it's like as a progressive but relative to the athlete escalation of the difficulty, right? um, this is important because of everything we want to cultivate, again, about this hitterish mindset of kids getting into the box and looking to hit and being creative about the solutions they deploy to find barrel on ball. I want that type of creativity. I want Vladdy Sr., right? I want you to be crazy enough to hit it off the bounce. And hey, along the way, if you want to mix in things like literal, like bouncing a tennis ball at a kid, or having them bounce a tennis ball and then get it, or have them self toss and catch a barrel, all of that stuff is good. All of it. My kids have done all of it. We've done all that type of stuff in the academy. Um, it's good. Let them do that. Let them have some autonomy to kind of like, hey, you want to finish practice where we went down to this field and I'm going to give you, 6 tennis balls, and you either just need to like self toss to yourself or bounce them off the dirt and then try to time up your swing and hit a nuke. Perfect. Great. Tons of fun. Again, if you're training indoors, you probably do that with smash factor balls. Um, but again, the idea is that like this progression is relative to the athlete. They might take a dip. They might struggle all of a sudden to find good barrels and flips. Okay, cool. Well, maybe we're going to vacillate back and forth between not T and side soft and a neglect of flips entirely, but maybe we're just going to go side soft into flips, right? We're going to do 3-4 rounds of flips, then we'll go pick, we'll talk, come back, and now we're going to do our flips, right? Um, I think I talked about this a couple episodes ago, but my kids were in high school now, and a couple, maybe a month ago now at this point, they had to do like a learning assessment. And the way that learning assessment worked is the system was flexible in that if they continued to answer correctly, the questions would scale up in difficulty. And then if they didn't answer questions correctly, it would kind of scale back down. And the difficulty isn't flat, it's not static. It kind of ebbs and flows relative to the kid's capacity. There's no reason, if you are working with one single athlete that you made, this is a person you made, that you can't go to the field every single day and should feel comfortable scaling difficulty up or scaling difficulty down relative to your kid, what they have the skill for that day, what they have the emotional bandwidth for that day. And again, flashback to a couple episodes ago, the guy that was just like giving it to his kid in Huntington Beach. Um, that's the time for you to deploy that type of skill, because the thing that just makes my blood boil about this type of stuff is when a kid walks off the field feeling incapable at these ages, right? Um, my son has been struggling on the hitting side for probably like a month. Um, he's going to be 50 in January, and it was interesting because he was kind of convinced that there was something wrong mechanically with his swing. And now that he's almost 50, and I feel it's appropriate to start to have these type of conversations. So we started to talk about it. Well, he was like, I don't feel like I'm getting my lower half. I'm not using my lower half. I just feel like my swing is all upper arm, all arms. I'm just kind of swinging with my top half. Um, and I said, okay, tell me, why do you think that is, right? So I'm trying to engage him in this discussion about like why he's feeling what it is, and he's the one that's in the box. I've got my own thoughts and feelings when I watch him swing, but like he's in the box and I want to listen to what he's saying. Talked to some of our trainers. Everybody was kind of in agreement that like his feeling was actually correct, that he had kind of regressed in getting kind of this full body kinetic chain sequence that utilized the whole thing. And it was like, okay, well, what's the environment that's going to cultivate the thing that we want? Shout out to my brother Eric Kozak. Um, Shaq's recommendation was really two things. One was basically the Kershaw drill, where we're in the box, raise the lead leg up, drop it down, kind of ride it out like Kershaw does on the bump. Uh, and then from that position where we've got the legs kind of going the way we want it to, then we start to swing. Um, I think part of the reason that he started leaning that way is he dinged the ankle up a little while ago, and I think he just got a little gun shy about putting weight on the ankle. The ankle's healthy, so I said, okay, so what's the training environment that you need to be in to cultivate your feeling that is a safe thing that you can do, which is actually put weight on that lead leg, brace and rotate on it. Happy Gilmore's. So we basically give that as a drill prescription. Uh, and through that period of time, there were for sure some bad training days. And as a 14-year-old child, he would get frustrated, and I would go like, "Hey man, you just got to trust the system. You got to keep doing the work. And as long as you continue kind of building up reps, and again, working in the drills that are going to systematically solve the problem, we should be good. We should feel confident we're going to get to where we want to go." Um, PR to 87 miles an hour last night. Top eighth EV on the night was like 84 or something. Um, it all clicked, right? It all clicked all of a sudden. My 14-year-old child struggled dealing with the context of not performing the way that he wanted. And I'm still deploying some of the strategies that I developed when he was like 8 or 9 years old, and when my daughter was 8 and 9 years old, to try to put context around that. Your 7 to 8 year old child, uh, the way that they cope with that struggle, they just might go like, "Hey, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't like participating in this thing because I associate it with failure," especially if we parents and coaches double down on it. And even more so, man, wrapping up like failure and doing an activity with your parent has the capacity to be like a real not great mix. So, the point that I'm trying to make about kind of meeting your athlete where they are and being comfortable and capable scaling difficulty up and down is effectively as a way to kind of like, let's stem that tide. How do we make sure that kids can walk off the field feeling challenged, but also feeling accomplished, right? I think that's a. Sorry, I'm trying to get over this cold. Give me 2 seconds, guys. I think that's a reasonable place we want to get 7 or 8 year old children to, in terms of the way that they understand their relationship with this game and this process of getting better in it. You can feel challenged. You should feel challenged. You can also feel a little bit accomplished and hold both of those things simultaneously. That is the Jean Piaget, the formal operational stage, right? It's I can understand the abstract thought concept that I was challenged today, but I feel resolved and I feel accomplished in what I did, the successes that I did have, but I know that I want to get better, right? When they play a game of Rainbow Six Siege or Fortnite and they don't get the victory royale, but they take like second or third place, or maybe they go even on KD, kill death ratio. Uh, that's the nugget that the game is going, right? That the game is telling you, hey, you did okay, but there's another thing you can continue to work on. I want more of that signal for kids that are 7 to 8 years old. I want them to get that signal. But first of all, coming back to the original kind of core concept here, the kid's never going to get that feeling if you just tell them to not swing. If you have such a hard on for getting a base runner that you tell a 7 to 8-year-old child to not swing, well, guess what, man? You're serving yourself. You're not serving the athlete. Knock that off, please, for the love of God. Second, it's appropriate for them to be challenged, right? Not everybody's going to be a winner. That's okay. None of this stuff. It's okay for them to be challenged and accomplished, right? It's okay to be like, I did the best that I could today, but I know I want to get better. And the more that you lean into these concepts of gamification, the more that you lean into these concepts of like scaling difficulty up and down, the more that you lean into like these breadcrumbs of what are the amount of points that we score today, the better that child should feel about their path for getting better. And that, my friend, is the thing that you want them addicted to. I want kids that are addicted to this process skill development. I want kids that are addicted to improvement. I want that culture for kids that I work with because it's going to pay dividends for much longer than a 7-year-old or a 7U or an 8U season. That's life perspective. Our game is uniquely qualified to teach it, but we as the adults and coaches have to conduct it in a manner that they get that type of signal. It's on us. We got to be in agreement. That's how I teach a kid to hit at 7 or 8 years old. That's exactly what I would do. It's exactly what I did. Has it guaranteed anything about my kid getting a chance to play high school baseball? No. No, not at all. Didn't guarantee a single thing about that. There is no future outcome that is locked in because of the choices that I made at 7 to 8 years old. But that is a fallacy. It's a fallacy that that's even a thing that you could do. Because by the time they get to high school, by the time they get closer to the end of high school, you got to realize that like it's going to be on them at that point. It's not on you. Do I want to support my children in every potential endeavor that they have to help them get better? Yes. Am I going to do the work for them? No. Am I going to be the one that's responsible for the work? No. Can I be the one that's responsible for helping them be accountable? Sure. But that's a different thing. In the current configuration of things, where, again, from the question at the beginning of this thing, right, we have coaches that are telling 7 to 8-year-old children to not swing. Are the wins at that point that valuable? And like, who are they valuable to and for how long? I would offer that they're not valuable for long. And if they're valuable to anyone, either that child or you as a parent, that value diminishes very quickly over time. The more that your kid kind of stays in the game. And if that's the thing that you intend, kid better be able to hit, right? Unless you're growing like 7 or 8-year-old POs, and for the love of God, please don't do that.
Kids got to be able to swing a bat. Kids need to be able to understand how to make contact. Kids need to have a hitterish mindset. They had to have an approach. I'm not saying that you can like future proof and fix all that stuff at 7 or 8 years old. I'm saying that you can put them on a path. And that should be your responsibility as a coach. It was my responsibility when I was still coaching kids that age. Uh, I did it as well as I could. I definitely wasn't the best at it. And if I speak with conviction about this stuff now, it's only because I've learned more and don't have a time machine. I sure wish I did, but I don't. So Hove did that, so you don't have to go through that. Anybody gets that reference? I got nothing else. We're gonna keep this one a little bit short. I have a meeting that I was supposed to get into about 2 minutes ago, so I really do need to keep this short. Uh, Skills to Scale, Complete Youth Training Manual, pre-order information coming soon. We're gonna do a whole episode breakdown on it. Look forward to that. If you want to start to learn about some of these approaches we have for youth baseball environment or for youth baseball coaching development right now, check out the youth baseball development course. It's a great place to get started. It's specifically targeted at like a recreational baseball 90 to 120 day season. Axbat.com, code DL20. Get yourself 20% off of Axbats. Thank you guys as per usual for listening. Sorry about kind of the herky jerky, jury rig state of the room. The whole pod, we'll do a whole reveal of like the new space. It looks way better. It's going to be super cool. But this one is just you and me. So thankfully, hopefully you guys got something out of it. Thank you guys for listening. The likes, subscribes, the reviews, all that stuff is hugely important. If you listen to it, if you want to tell a friend, man, it really means a lot to us. And that's all I got. I'll catch you guys next time. Thanks.